Hello, and a very warm welcome to the latest edition of the Total Saints podcast. I'm Martin Starke, and I'm joined once again by our panel of devout Saints fans to discuss the last 7 days supporting Southampton Football Club. This episode of TSP is streaming live on our Facebook and our YouTube channel. If you're watching live on either of those platforms right now, you can get involved in the conversation using the comments section. We're also broadcasting live on Twitter. This week on the podcast, the cup run is over, but is the season over too? We'll discuss that, and it's another international break next weekend before a trip to Leeds in the league, so we'll preview that game. First of all, let me introduce you to our TSP guests, just the two of them this week. Ben Stanfield is the founder of the Total Saints podcast. How's your week been, Ben? Did you enjoy the game today?
Yeah, not too bad in terms of the week, Martin. Like the rest of the country, pretty much, I've been suffering with COVID. So I got released yesterday and finally got a negative test. I'm not sure that Glen gave it to me down the phone line. I don't think that's the case. But yeah, feeling a lot better now than I was maybe at the start of the week. And yeah, weirdly, in terms of this weekend, I actually feel happier sat here tonight after today's game than I did last weekend after the Watford game, which is a bit bizarre when you've lost by more goals.
It's a funny one, isn't it? But we'll get into that tonight. Plenty to discuss. And Glen de Cour is the writer of the weekly Saints blog, League One -10. Are you out now, Glen? Are you back at St Mary's? Were you there today?
I was there today after 12 days of positive tests. Probably broke some sort of record there. Thoroughly fed up. Finally got a negative test on got a negative test on Thursday. Delighted to rejoin the rest of the world. So stopped asking myself, what would Matt Le Tissier do? So yes, I was back there today, and I was pleased enough to be back, and not too similar to Ben, really, not too disappointed. I saw enough positive things to that were improvements on the previous performances. Put it that way.
Well, of course, the biggest hello and thank you, as always, is reserved to our patrons, wherever you might be listening or watching this week. Welcome to episode 191 of the Total Saints podcast. So we start with the FA Cup's 6th round at St Mary's and a pretty comprehensive 4-1 defeat for Southampton against Manchester City. Glen, it was comfortable in the end for City, but was the score a fair reflection, do you think?
Not really. It doesn't really matter whether it was or whether it wasn't. The bottom line is it's a cup game. You either win or you lose, and we lost overall. You have to say we deserve to lose. In answer to the question, yeah, it did flatter them a little bit, but at the end of the day, they did pass up a few chances at the end when our intensity levels had dropped. We basically stayed in the game for 75 minutes. But ultimately, when you look at it, the reasons we lost is, we said last week that you can't afford to give them anything. If they score a brilliant goal, which they did with the last 2 goals, if they score a brilliant goal, that's fair enough. But if you give them goals, it just makes your task impossible. It's impossible if you give any team goals. I mean, we gave Watford goals and we couldn't come back against them. And the first goal is dreadful, and the second goal is dreadful, and that just makes it very, very difficult. I think Ralph was kind of sawn off a little bit because he picked a team to kind of come strong in the second half, bring the main strikers on in the second half and use the 5 subs, kind of similar to what he did against West Ham. And I think that was sound enough sort of thinking. But unfortunately, we coughed up the second goal at the time when we wanted to sort of really push on and try and nick it. And wasn't to be. But when you see the quality that City could bring off the bench and the fact that they both scored, it's just ridiculous. And overall positive energy levels were a lot better than they were against Watford. Mike Dean wasn't abysmally bad. He wasn't the reason that we lost, which is about all you can ask when Mike Dean referees. So overall, it was an enjoyable enough game. Disappointing that we're out, but you can't be surprised. We played against City now, 180 minutes in the league, and we've competed, and 75 minutes today, and we competed. And when you look at the squad and the players and the manager that they've got, it's an achievement to have done that. But yeah, it's disappointing that we lost today. But
more praise from Pep after the game as well. Ben, obviously tighter than the score suggested. Is it crazy how quickly a tight 1-1 suddenly becomes a hammering by the time the final whistle goes?
It is a bit, isn't it? It's kind of scary. And I think they even had 2 or 3 other good chances towards the end. I mean, it could have been a silly score, and I totally agree with Glenn. I mean, I almost felt you sat there scratching your head thinking, how have we lost 4-1? But I think it evidences the quality that they've got, doesn't it? And Glenn's spot on. I mean, they can bring on 40, 50 million pound players. We're bringing on 10, 15 million pound players, and that's the difference. And, I have to say, I mean, let's not get carried away. We still lost the game. We're out the cup. It's disappointing. But I thought everyone in a Saints shirt today gave 100%. I was sort of sat there watching the game thinking, at least we've gone out with our heads held high, and that's the least you can ask for. I think we had pretty, tough game last Sunday, as I said, against Watford. But ultimately, I think we just ran out of puff in the end, and maybe we could have done with a drinks break or an energy gel or something like that. But I think the difference is when their chances came along, they took them. We had a couple of good chances. Armstrong obviously hitting the post, which was unlucky. Big chance for Shea at 2-1. That goes in. It's potentially a different game, and they go straight out the other end and kill us off, really. So I thought, in terms of Saints, just lacked a bit of quality and composure in the final third when they really needed it. And ultimately, on another day, potentially take that to extra time. But as I said, I think we go out with our heads held high.
Nick's watching on YouTube. He says Che's miss was unfortunate. That was the turning point, because if that had gone in, we might have carried some momentum into the final stages of the game. And Mark says, I've just got home to Swindon after the game. Not a bad performance from Saints today, and certainly happier after previous games. So I think we can all agree on that. We'll get onto the goals in just a moment. Let's start with the team selection, shall we, Glenn? Because we were told it was disrespectful to criticise the team selection before the West Ham game. And then on the face of it, we start the biggest game of the season with the 2 reserve strikers. So was it madness, or did it work to a certain extent?
I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think there was a little bit of logic behind it, in that Adam Armstrong and Shane Long were going to run around like madmen for as long as they could. And then hopefully we're still in the game, and then we bring the big guns on, if you like, to win it. So I can kind of see it. When you lose and you haven't picked what is seen as your 11 best players, there will always be questions. But I wasn't unhappy with the team selection. I would have been if we'd made 9 changes again. So I thought the thinking was sound enough, but I think the goals that we let in particular the second goal, that came at exactly the wrong time. I was beginning to think at 1-1 that we could maybe even nick this, certainly get to extra time, but unfortunately then we coughed up another goal. And so with regards to the team selection, I didn't think it was too bad. I was pleased to see basically the first choice midfield, who I all thought had decent games. They certainly played a lot better than they have done in the previous couple of games. And yeah, the fullbacks both did well. I thought Tino looked more closer to his best level, especially in the first half today. So that's a positive going forward. Walker Peters I thought was excellent again, despite yet again being snubbed by England, which is annoying. But you never know. I hear there's a couple of injuries at fullback, so he may get called up this week. But and I don't think Fraser didn't have a chance really with any of the goals. Nearly got a hand to the penalty, didn't he?
But, that was so unlucky, wasn't it?
Yeah. And you could tell he was frustrated because he got close to it. But yeah, that you can always, as I say, when you lose and you've picked Shane Long and Adam Armstrong, you can always complain when you've got what are seen as 2 better strikers on the bench.
But it was quite evident, Ben, I thought, for the first 15, 20 minutes that the pressing was working. And arguably, when Adams and Brozier came on, we looked less of a threat in a way.
Yeah, I think Shea, as we mentioned, had a chance, didn't he? Brazier struggled to get into the game, but I think, let's be honest, lots of players coming on. It's quite hard to sometimes get up to speed when you're playing against Man City. You're not seeing much of the ball. But yeah, I thought Long and Armstrong worked hard first half. I thought they put themselves around. John Stones put the ball out of play a couple of times trying to pass it because they were putting them under pressure. It goes back to what we said earlier. The difference is Shea Adams and Brazier potentially score a couple of those chances and you are very much 2-1 up or 2-2, you're in the game. The difference is with Shane and Adam, we know that they don't necessarily have that sort of prowess in front of goal, so that's obviously what they lack. But yeah, I agree with Glenn. I mean, it was a stronger team on paper than the West Ham game, so you'd obviously given it a bit of thinking, but I didn't really have a problem with the lineup. And as I said at the start, Martin, I think for me, everyone out there today gave 100%. I thought the centre-backs were a little bit shaky throughout the game, but again, you've got to look at the quality that they're playing against.
Yeah, let's get on to the centre-backs in just a minute. But first, Glenn, I wanted to talk about Romeo and James Ward-Prowse, because I thought for at least 75 minutes they were back to their best today. It was good to see Prowse spraying balls around, and I thought they were looking out for each other again. And we've not really seen that in the last 3 games.
No, they've certainly had a little bit of a dip. A month ago, I was looking at those two thinking, I'd struggle to swap these for virtually any midfielders in the league. Realistically, they were so good as a pairing. But things have certainly dropped off the last sort of 2 or 3 weeks. But today, I thought it was a positive. They certainly looked to be back on it, especially Romeo. He seems to have dropped off a little bit more than Prowse did over the last few games, but he was snapping into things. Maybe it was Jack Grealish being back again. Maybe that fired him up again. But there's no fight in the tunnel this time. But yeah, I definitely thought they were better. And some of Ward-Prowse's passing, the vision he showed, the first time ball he hit over to Elianusi, was it? That was the Che Adams chance, wasn't it?
Yeah,
in the second half. He played some great stuff, and I was impressed with the two of them, considering they're up against, it's basically 2 of them up against 3, and those 3 are De Bruyne, Gundogan, and whatever other brilliant player they've got in there. I can't remember who it was, but Rodri's the other one, and he's superb. He just never flustered, just knocks the ball off all the time, and then you got De Bruyne doing everything, and Gundogan arriving in the penalty area late, and he's a nightmare from the point of view of picking him up. But I thought R2 really stood up well, and hopefully they can take that into the next game, because they're going to need to, because as we're playing Leeds, and that's another sort of high energy team that we're going to need to match.
Was it a good midfield battle for you today, Ben? Do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Glenn. I mean, I think when you think it's 2 against 3, you think of Rodri. They always talk in cricket, don't they, about good batsmen make it look easy because they give themselves time. They make it look like they've got more time on the ball than they have. And he, for me, epitomizes that in the footballing world. He just looks like he's got so much time on the ball, and he's everywhere. But again, it's the challenge for them as well, isn't it? I think it's proving to themselves that they can compete against those sort of players that are on an elite level. Man City are one of the 2 or 3 best clubs in Europe, aren't they? So it's a real challenge for them. As Glenn said there, absolutely, I couldn't agree more. The key now is for them to take that form that they've shown today into the rest of the season, and for Saints as a whole to keep up the level of effort they've shown and not let the season fizzle out.
Yeah, the motivation is going to be the key, isn't it? Let's talk about Jack Stephens and Salazar and the goals. Let's start with Stephens. He's got a lot of credit in the bank for his desire and his passion, and we've all been a big supporter of his over the years. But that was a dreadful slip and a mistake for that first goal, Glenn. It was just, oh God, Here we go. It was like a throwback to the old Jack Stephens in a way.
What can you say? I mean, it's up the other end of the pitch to me. I have seen it since on the highlights. And at the time, I looked at it and thought that looked really, really bad. But it's up the other end of the pitch, so you kind of don't think too much about it. You only know that you're 1-0 down. But when you watch it on the replay, it's horrendous. It's just a horrible scuffed clearance with his left foot. It doesn't get off the ground. City have still got to do something with it, and it was Grealish's best contribution because he controlled it, poked it to Sterling, and even Sterling couldn't miss that one. As I said last time, that's a hill I'll die on. I'm never impressed with Raheem Sterling, and he butchered a few chances in the second half to make it to keep us in the game. But it was a bad mistake, and unfortunately it seemed to affect him, because it wasn't the only mistake. He got away with 2 or 3 as well, where a real ropey looking pass that nearly got intercepted, things like that. So it's difficult, in Stephen's defence. It's difficult when you're not playing to come in and suddenly be up to speed, especially playing against a team like that. But he's had a lot of chances, and I do wonder. He's either got to be in the team playing regularly, or I don't think he's the sort of player that's suited to sort of coming in and playing 1 game in 5. He just doesn't. He seems to take too long to get up to speed. I mean, if he'd have picked Jan Valery today, I wouldn't have had a problem with that, because I think he's done well. But Stevens is the more experienced player, so that that's why he got brought in. So yeah, but he just needs he needs to hit the ground running when he's given the chances, because on performances like today, you wouldn't be in a hurry to pick him again. Yeah. He's not done himself any favors. He's not going to be, barring an injury crisis, he's not going to be playing in the next league game, having put in a performance like that today. It's unfortunate, and he's the sort of player that we all want to do well. We like his attitude. I like the fact that he gets involved and he winds up the opposition and all that sort of stuff. But I think Steve Grant always points out he's good at looking after other people, but he's not so good at looking after himself sometimes. And I think that showed today.
I think there was a bit in the second half, Martin, where Mike Dean got him and Ward-Prowse together and pretty much told Ward-Prowse, I don't want him to keep telling me what to do and refereeing the game, that sort of thing, pretty much. And that's the one thing that we love about Jack, isn't it? When he's on the pitch, you always feel like you've got someone in the ear hole of the ref. So that's the one positive he does bring. But I agree with Glenn. It's hard when he's not had a run of games to come back in the side. You're facing a team like City, but he was a bit off it today. I think he would agree that.
So Ben, we've had this kind of discussion before, but it kind of feels like we're one centre back away from being a decent side. Is that the problem at the moment? The missing link, somebody to come in. There isn't an obvious choice if one of them's out.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Salasu, obviously, as we know, and we'll come on to talk about the second goal, I'm sure, in a moment. He's certainly starting to look like a really good quality Premier League defender. If he's fit, he's going to play. We know that. Other than that, it feels like we've got 2 or 3 half decent centre backs. Stevens, Bednarek. I totally agree with Glenn. We all agreed Valery had a really good game against West Ham in the Cup and probably deserved to start today, maybe. So again, there's options there. But for me, we've spoken a lot about the goalkeeping position this summer. I think if they've got money in the bank, that is another position. I think trying to find a long-term partner for Salasu, definitely.
And there's a few quotes that have been flying around from Ralph's press conference about Bednarek today, Glenn, and why he didn't play. And Ralph was asked about it. He says he's okay. He's got a big game for Poland next week. And it seems to me that he's not 100% with his mind for us here today. So I've heard of managers resting players when they come back from international duty, but not before they go away. That's bizarre, isn't it?
It is a bit, but I think it probably says that he doesn't see that there's much difference between Bednarek and Stevens. And to be honest, there isn't. So he probably thought, I can afford, if his mind's not 100% on it, then I can probably afford to leave him out today. And it does solve that problem of giving someone else a game. Bednarek can be very hit and miss as well, so there's no guarantee he wouldn't have made similar mistakes. It's not as if we're leaving out Virgil van Dijk or something like that.
Or resting James Ward-Prowse.
Yeah.
We're not tearing up trees here, are we?
No, we're not. So, I mean, it's I would say it's very, very charitable of a club manager to think about international players at international teams. That doesn't happen often, does it? But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't read too much into that, and I don't think it's I don't think it's a dreadful problem that Bednarek didn't play today.
Let's talk about that equaliser just before half-time, Ben. The perfect time to score. It's odd that we lose 4-1. They score all 5 of the goals. But I think credit to James Ward-Prowse for the challenge that was in there, because he kept that alive. He kept that move going.
Yeah, I mean, we'd had a few instances where we had played the ball in sort of behind them and got into good positions, I think, during that half. For me, Martin, we totally deserved that goal. I mean, yeah, it was a great time to score, but I think more importantly, it gave the team reward for their first half efforts. Great run from Al-Yunusi. I think it was Stuart Armstrong, that played the ball through to him. I think, my immediate thought, probably like most people, he's offside. It's going to be cancelled through VAR. And when you saw it again, it was a really well-timed run. need a bit of luck to put it in. But I think, that gave them a lift going in at half time, because they put a lot of energy into that first half. And I think they've definitely given City problems. And to come away with a goal, it was an own goal, but it was still a reward for the amount of effort that they put in, and gave them something to come out and hold on to in the second half, obviously.
And it changed the atmosphere in the stadium, Glen, didn't it?
Yeah, two things about that goal that I thought were amusing. One, that it was Laporte, who I don't like. I've got more irrational hatred coming from me there. Don't like Laporte. And the other one was that Kyle Walker threw a complete tantrum when the ball went in, because he thought it was offside. It clearly wasn't, because he gets looked at by VAR.
It was him keeping them onside.
It was him keeping them onside, and as soon as the half-time whistle went, he wellied the ball out of the ground.
There's a video of it.
He just wellied it out of the ground. It's just.
That's some effort, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good effort from there. Went over the top of the Egyptian stand. So well played, Carl.
You don't see those.
Trying to dump it in the river or whatever. But yeah, it was a bit of a strange reaction. But yeah, it did change the atmosphere. I mean, I kind of went into the game with zero expectations, and I was happy to get to halftime 1-0 down. Because it's interesting when you we said last week about you don't want to go behind against City, but if you go behind after 10 minutes like we did, there's no real change to the game plan. You stick to it, and hope that something happens, and it did at halftime. And the problem was, if you go behind in the second half, suddenly you think, we've only got 20 minutes to go. We need to open up a little bit. And that's when it all goes horribly wrong against a team like City. But yeah, half time we went in and everyone was kind of buzzing, and that was the case for me until until the second goal. I just began to think that I can see 90 minutes in sight here, and we can maybe take this to extra time or maybe even nick it. But no, it certainly made half time more enjoyable, especially because I was imagining Kyle Walker throwing teacups around the changing room. But, there you go.
Happy to go and get that ball back. Let's talk about the penalty, Ben. Was that soft penalty, rash challenge, just a moment of stupidity? Because he's got form on this, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, every part of me wants to have my red and white glasses on and say, it was Mike Dean, etc., etc. When it first happened, Martin, my immediate thought was that's a penalty. I didn't see anything in the replay really that determined otherwise. I think we know with Mike Dean, he's always likely to give those sort of things. Would we have got it down the other end? Same situation? Maybe not. But I think even Ralph said after the game it was a penalty. And I go back to what I said earlier about Salasu, that rawness that he's still got in him. Does he really need to be making a challenge like that in that part of the pitch? No, he doesn't. Just hold him up, try and shepherd him out of play. So it was a silly lunge, and that was the turning point in the game. So I think as much as I'd love to say it was Mike Dean, it wasn't a penalty, I can't, because it was.
The thing is that Salasu had a similar sort of nibble at Jack Grealish at the start of the second half, and I couldn't believe that Grealish didn't go over, bearing in mind how much he likes to go over. So he kind of got away with that one, and when he went for that one, I was like, no, just stay on your feet. And that I sit literally directly behind where that incident happened, and as soon as it happened, penalty, no danger. And there was a little delay before Mike Dean gave it, and like Ben, much though I'd love to slag off Mike Dean, I can't blame him at all for giving that.
But it was a shame, Glenn, because I thought Salasu had a really good game. Apart from that, I thought he felt like he was one of the players that was definitely back to his levels of a few weeks ago. But on the same hand, he's 23 next month, and he's made these kind of mistakes before. He's got to start learning. They've got to start coaching this, and he's got to cut these out of his game. 23
is, you got to remember, 23 is very young for a centre half. It's sort of acknowledged that they don't really, that's why you get so few young players coming through and playing centre half in the Premier League at sort of 18, 19. It just
and it's his first full season as well.
Yeah, but yeah, he is still a bit raw, and if he wasn't, he wouldn't be playing for us. He put together a run of really good performances, and I was thinking we're going to struggle to hold on to him this summer. But in some ways, a couple of mistakes, sort of highish profile mistakes, will probably do us some favours for next year, because I think he'll, people, the big clubs will still be looking at him thinking, nah, too rash. We'll leave it another year and see what he does. So I don't think it's long term. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. But he does need to learn, because both with this one and the Tottenham one where he got sent off when he trashed Song Heung-min, both of those challenges didn't need to be made, because in both cases, I mean, the Son tackle, the ball was running through to the goalkeeper, so there was no need to make that one. And today, Gabriel Jesus wasn't going anywhere anyway. He was out on the edge of the box. Okay, he might have put a cross in that ended up in a goal, but knowing him, probably not. So there was no need to make the challenge. And he has to learn. Outside the box, fine. Inside, there's got to be a little light going on to say, stay on your feet and just block it.
Yeah. Great chance at 2-1. That great ball, Ben, from James Ward-Prowse, and the touch from Elyounoussi was magical, wasn't it? It deserved more than Adams firing straight at the keeper.
Yeah, I mean, as Glenn said earlier, I thought both him and Armstrong, Stewart, that is, there's too many Armstrongs in the Saints team these days, had a really good game today. I thought, Elyounoussi obviously scored last week, but other than that, didn't really do a lot. But I thought he was really involved today, and yeah, I mean, it was a great move. And I go back to what I said earlier. I mean, we made some really good attacking plays there. I was looking here. I think we had 13 shots. They had 19. So we created a lot of chances against Man City, which not many teams do. And I think with that Shea one, Martin, anywhere but straight at the keeper, and it's 2-2. And that he almost caught it too well. It was on his left foot, but again, that was the pivotal moment in the game. There was a chance, wasn't there? Gundogan hit the post to make it, would have made it 2-0, and then obviously we equalised. If that had gone 2-0 for them, you almost think that could have been a different game. The same with the Shea Adams chance. That goes in at 2-2. Saints' tails are up. They got some of their more senior players on the pitch by then and can have a real go at it. So it was disappointing. But again, I think Shea's had a really good run of form over the last few weeks. I think it's hard to begrudge him the odd missed chance. At least he's getting into those positions, and hopefully next time it'll go in.
And then
lots of cliches in there.
The Foden goal as well, Glenn, that was down your end, wasn't it? And in a way, I was kind of relieved when that went in, because you kind of think, well, I don't want us to go out the cup for these two mistakes, and that was a worldie of a goal, and you kind of think, well, that deserved to win the game.
And it's just absurd goal. It's just there's a lucky bounce sort of back to him, but the touch he takes and then the power he gets on the shot, it just fizzes in. And Fraser's in a decent run of form at the moment. He didn't get near that. Nowhere near it. And no goalkeeper saves that. It's just a brilliant goal, and that's what brings home to you the differences between between their squad and ours, and it's absurd. We've scored some decent long range goals ourselves this season. But it's always like a bit of a surprise. It's just not a surprise when Foden does it. He's just technically such a good player. And we talk about us bringing on our strikers to make our team stronger. When you consider that they took off Grealish, who was having a quiet game, and Gabriel Jesus, who wasn't doing much, and they brought on Foden and Mahrez. It's just like, what? It's just not
we brought
fair.
on Gineppo, didn't we?
Yeah, he did a lot, didn't he? Fell over the ball a couple of times, dribbled it off the pitch. It's always useful when someone does that. But when you bring on those two, you think Bernardo Silva, who's probably been their best player this season, didn't even play. It's just nuts. But that goal was brilliant. And
that's the point for me where you go, hands up, okay.
And Mahrez's goal, though, there was a little drop in intensity around the third and fourth goal from us, where we kind of realised the game was up a little bit, and there was just sort of five or so minutes where we weren't quite snapping in the tackles and we weren't quite closing down aggressively, and they scored the 2 goals during that time. That just shows that against a team like City, you've got to be on it for the whole game, otherwise they will score, and that's what happened with those 2 goals at the end.
Did you what did you make of those 2 goals, Ben? Have you just got to hold your hands up and go that's where the money gets spent, and that's why those players score those goals?
I think so. I mean, I can't really, I want to say we were having a good go at that time as well. We were 2-1 down, 3-1 down. We probably felt like we needed to push up the pitch a little bit more. I mean, we weren't gung ho, we weren't all over them, but I think Mahrez, for me, I was pleased to see him on the bench at the start of the game, because I think he is an exceptional talent, and his finish obviously giving force to the eyes, and that was kind of, again, 4-1, and he had a couple of other chances, dragged one wide, but I think they just, they find the space. Their one-touch football is incredible, and I think that's what we got to remember as Saints fans. And I think the majority of Saints fans do appreciate that. Is that 4-1 to City on paper is a disappointing result, but I think you have to take a step back and go, they had their strongest available side out, bar Ederson, and for 75 minutes today, Saints performed really, really well. And I think when you look across the course of this season, we've played them 3 times now. We have competed really, really well with them, and that kind of sets the benchmark. But ultimately, it goes back to what we said. They've got world-class players that can win you any game from any position, and you just have to accept that sometimes.
And how do you look back at the cup run? I just want to ask you both about this before we move on. We were talking about maybe a 10th place finish and a half decent cup run. Has that delivered for you, Glenn, in terms of the cup? Some good results and some players, and certainly some decent goals.
Well, I mean, the cup, as I said earlier, it's a win or lose thing. So if you look at the tournament as a whole, you either win it or you don't, and we haven't won it since I was 7. So it'll be. But as soon as the draw was made, it kind of, I don't know, it kind of pours cold water on any sort of ambition that you might have had of winning it, because it's suddenly going to be ridiculously difficult. And as it turns out, it would have been Liverpool in the semi-final if we'd got through, which is a team that we usually have a plan to play against Man City, but against Liverpool we quite often don't and get hammered. So that would have been incredibly difficult.
An expensive day out as well.
If we had got and losing to Liverpool is never fun. But overall, the FA Cup, I mean, we had a couple of championship sides where we played like the second string and got through with a bit, with a few wobbles in both those games. West Ham game was excellent. That's the highlight of the cup run this year, not least because we all got proved wrong with the team selection, and we managed to get through that game, and that's good, and that's one team that we've turned it around this season against West Ham, because in previous 4 or 5 seasons we've not got anything against them, whereas this year we've had 2 wins and a draw, isn't it? So that's certainly been the highlight. But to get to the last 8 is decent when you look at it, but it'd be nice in my lifetime if we could actually get to the final and win it. But it just gets progressively more and more difficult every year, because these big teams just get stronger and stronger and stronger. So hopefully we'll have got rid of Chelsea this time next year, and there'll only be 5 teams to avoid instead of. Well, to be honest, now there's only really 3 teams to avoid, because the others you feel like you can get a result against. But City, Liverpool, and to a slightly lesser extent the current Chelsea team, they're just a different level.
Yeah. Ben, your thoughts on the cup run this year, looking back?
Yeah, I think much the same. I know Oliver, my son, was very disappointed in the garden afterwards, because I'd promised him we'd go to Wembley if they got to the semi-final, because my dad and brother are away, so we can use their tickets. But I had a stat during the game, actually, Martin, that we'd lost 3 FA Cup ties out of our last 18 before today. So when you think, obviously, we got a couple of semi-finals in there, we got to the semi-finals last year, quarter-finals today, I think actually you realise that Saints have done pretty well in the FA Cup over the last few years. And I echo what Glenn said there. I think I kind of summed it up in a tweet earlier, but we've had 3 good wins along the way, different sort of methods, 3 stunning goals when you think back to Stuart Armstrong's goal, which for me was the moment of the FA Cup run against Coventry, Perot's goal, and then obviously Brozier. I think we've got the squad involved, which was obviously a big talking point, particularly with the lineups, and then I think getting through to the quarterfinals and giving City a good game. So I think for me, probably an 8 out of 10 FA Cup run, and I think definitely something that, as Martin Semmons said to us before on the pod, they want to take the cup seriously. I think we've done that this season, and as when you look at the semi-finalists, 3 of them are, I think as Mark's just said in the comments, 3 of them are Champions League sides, so we've done well to get down to where we have.
Yeah, and Nick points out the good news is that Mike Dean will never ref a cup game for us again now, Glenn, so that's got to bring you a little bit of...
Why is that? Is he retiring?
Yes. Yeah, he's stepping back, isn't he? Yeah.
Oh, what a shame.
You might never see him again, Glenn.
Yeah, that would be good.
We'll have to find something else to talk about next season.
Yeah.
Right, let's get on to we've got the international break again, another international break just around the corner, and then it's all about Leeds United away in the Premier League. So a 1-0 win in September. It was Brozier's first goal and the first win for us. But they had a few players out that day, Ben, didn't they? So it might be a slightly different game depending on who's coming back in this time round.
Yeah, I think we were just talking about this before we went on air, didn't we, Martin? And I think Bamford, Phillips, Rafinha, Ayling, none of those were playing against Saints at St Mary's back in October time. But I've got to say, I watched their game at Wolves on Friday night, and I'm sure some of the people listening did. And as a neutral, it was one of the most entertaining games I've seen all season. I just thought it was an absolutely fantastic Premier League game of football when you think of some of the dross that we sit and watch these days. I'm actually going to Ellen Road in a couple of weeks, and at half time I was thinking, rubbing my hands, brilliant, it's going to be a day out, Saints are going to be back on it, happy days. By the end I was thinking, God, we're going to need to be up for that one because they're showing fight and determination and energy and all that sort of thing. But look, I think, I'm sure we'll come on to some of the specifics. You know what you need to do at Ellen Road. I've been twice before. I've never seen Saints win there, so fingers crossed third time lucky. But you know that you're going to have to run around a lot. You know that you're going to need to have energy. You're going to have to fight. The crowd are going to be up for it. They're almost safe now, probably with the couple of results that they've now had against Norwich and against Wolves. So will that mean that they relax a little bit more? It'll be interesting to see. But tough side, and fair play to them, because I think it was a really, really good win at Wolves on Friday night.
Maybe you're the bad omen, Ben. Maybe you should stay
I'm
away.
a bad omen wherever I go, Martin. I should get a season ticket at Fratton Park. That would be good.
What have you made of the new manager coming in, Glen? And obviously they had a good result against Wolves. They had the win against Norwich as well. This is a team that are stringing a couple of results together now, isn't it? Just at the wrong time for us.
I think it's a shame that Bielsa was replaced, because I kind of wanted him to do well, but I think it got to the stage where a change was needed, and so it's been proved. Would they have got these couple of results they've got without Bielsa? With Bielsa still there, maybe. But the managers seems to have had a decent impact. I don't really know if they're playing any differently. What I will say for Leeds this season is that I don't want them to get near relegation, for the simple reason that they've had a lot of injuries all season. Their main striker Bamford has been missing for most of it. Calvin Phillips has been missing for most of it. As far as I know, they didn't call any games off for COVID. They just ploughed on. They played their games. They got hammered in some games, and I think there's a lot to like about their attitude. Last year up there, we played well first half, and then we had a shocker in the second half. We just caved in and lost 3-0. I don't know if their pitch is any better than it was last year, because last year it was like, I've seen better pitches on in the Sunday Park League than that. So hopefully that's a bit better. They're still in a bit of trouble. They got, I think it's 29 points now, so they'll be seeing Southampton at home as certainly as a game where they can pick up 3 points and move closer to safety. At the end of the day, they're not that good. So if we turn up and put a performance in, they're down near the bottom for a reason. They might have some players back, but they had 4 injured against Wolves. So who knows what they're going to have on the pitch. I know Phillips is nearly fit now, and Bamford sort of played and then got injured again. So I don't know what team they're going to have in a couple of weeks' time. So I see it as a good chance to get a result if we're up for it. A key thing to Leeds is the crowd. Ellen Road is a bit like Goodison Park, where if you can shut the crowd up, then it's decent, and then you're just playing the 11 players and not the sort of atmosphere that gets generated at these sort of big old grounds. So yeah, overall I'm reasonably optimistic, but we've got to bring our A game. We're not going to be able to play like we did against Watford and Newcastle and get anything out of it.
That's the concern, isn't it, Ben? I know we can take some confidence from today, but it was still a defeat. That's 4 defeats in a row, and they won't want that to be 5 defeats in a row.
I hadn't really thought it was 4 defeats in a row until you said that, Martin. That's depressed me a little bit, actually. So, I mean, that goes back to the again, what we were talking about earlier. It's really important now that Saints don't let the season fizzle out and end up finishing 15th, and us all feel we've taken a very, very small step forward from where we were last year. So, they've got 2 weeks now to recharge the batteries. I appreciate other clubs have as well. A bit of time to work on the training ground, start to think about how they want to approach that game. But it's going to come down to heart, gut, determination, all those sort of things for that game at Leeds. And, their tails up. I think they'd lost 4 in a row before they'd won these 2 games. So maybe we can follow a similar pattern and start to turn it around again.
Does the international break help, Glen? Is that a chance to recover, work on some fine-tuning, or do these things tend to come along when we're just finding a bit of form, we're starting to turn things around? And It'd be just like us to have a positive performance today and then come back in.
Yeah, well, no, but at the end of the day, it's not like we're on a 3-match unbeaten run or anything like that, is it? I don't think it's a bad thing for us to be having an international break at this stage. I mean, I don't know how many players are missing. I know it's the World Cup playoffs, and obviously the Scotland one's been called off. So I don't know how many players are going to be away. I don't know if Scotland have got another game, for example.
Don't think so. Yeah, I'm not sure.
For Stuart Armstrong to disappear too. I don't know how many teams are, have got players missing. So, but I don't think it's a bad thing for us at the moment to be having a couple of weeks where a majority of the players are training at Staplewood, and that's it really.
Mm. And who starts for you, Glenn? Are we reverting back to that what we would call our favourite 11? Do you think is that if they're all rested and ready to go, is that where we go?
To be honest, it would surprise me if we didn't. There's a question mark at the Stevens or Bednarek at centre half, but I think with Armstrong and Elyounoussi both having really good games today, I'd be surprised if they're if they're replaced, simply because none of the alternatives have really put their hand up in any of their substitute appearances and said they have to be picked. Tino was back to his best today, so I don't see Perot coming in at left back, and I think that the two main strikers will be back in place. So, barring any injuries or COVID absences or anything like that, I don't see our team being massively different to what we've had. What has been established as our best 11, if you like.
Do you agree, Ben? I know the front two put a shift in today, didn't they? But there was nothing in that to suggest that they deserve a start.
No, I think the front six kind of picks itself. That's tried and tested the last few weeks. I think a bit like we had the goalkeeping tombola last season. I think it's the fullback tombola at the moment, isn't it? So as Glenn says, it's probably, I think we all know that Ralph's very fond of Tino. Tino, I thought was really, really good today, but is he too attacking for a game like Leeds, where you might need to be a little bit more defensive and try and stop their wingers and things like that? I think they've all got Harrison and Dan James, haven't they, and people like that are quite nippy as well. So do you potentially go with someone a little bit more defensive in Perot and KWP? But I think if you ask me now, I would probably go Tino at right back, KWP at left back, and then everything else I think kind of picks itself, assuming Bednarek comes back in at centre back, Martin.
Yep. Okay, let's do score predictions for the game. Feel free to stick yours in the comments if you're watching along. We need to start writing down what people predict as well, just so we can start calling people out, because it feels like it's just us that gets it wrong every week. Needless to say, I don't think any of us got the Man City score bang on. But back to the league. Glenn, how do you see this one playing out?
I think it'll be quite a close game, and I will go for a 1-1 draw.
A 1-1 draw, right? And Ben, you're going to be there, so
yeah.
I forgot that. 4-1 to Leeds.
That's what I feel like I should go with. If Saints take their chances, then I think Saints will create chances. But I have a fear that I think Leeds are going to be really up for it, and I think Saints will be on the back foot for a bit of the game as well. So I'm going to go for an entertaining, assuming we take our chances, 2-2 draw.
2-2 draw, right? Okay. Before we finish, I just wanted to talk about the England squad and the announcement. Glenn, great to see James Ward-Prowse getting a call up again. I think he, obviously has thoroughly deserved that. Tino with the under-21s, but nothing for Kyle Walker-Peters. And we know that may or may not change, but he just doesn't seem to be one of the names that's being mentioned by anybody other than Saints fans at the moment. And I can't work out why.
There has been a little bit of a talk about him, simply because of the number of injuries there are at fullbacks at the moment. Because I know Trippier, who's kind of the option that can play right and left back, he's injured. Luke Shaw's never fit for a variety of reasons. He eats too much. You've got Reece James has been in and out of Chelsea all season, injured. So, and now Trent Alexander-Arnold is also injured. So there is a chance that he will get called up next week, as I said at the start. But I can understand him not being called up as a right back, because there are just so many options. But the fact that he's demonstrating that he can do a really good job at left back, I think, he's competing against Trippier, if you like. And Trippier's a quality player. So, I can understand Southgate not wanting to rock the boat with bringing yet another player in, but as it turns out, he may not have a choice. I think he's certainly ahead of people like the young lad Johnson at West Ham, and he's probably ahead of Tariq Lamptey from Brighton. So there is a chance that he'll get called up, but I don't think Carl's played for England at age group level since, I think he might have played for the under-21s, but he's certainly not been near a squad as yet. So and I'm sure he will. He's just got to keep his head down, and keep playing well for us. But what he has done is that even in our poor performances recently, he's been probably our best player.
Yeah, that Newcastle game.
Yeah, there's been no drop off from him at all, and you would hope that is noticed. But as we know, it is very difficult for Southampton players to get in the squad and make any headway with England. I mean, the fact that that if there was a squad being picked for a tournament tomorrow, Ward-Prowse would probably get left out because he'd pick, the likes of Phillips or whatever, or Jordan Henderson would be in the team ahead of him, let alone the youngsters like, Bellingham and Mason Mount, slightly different position, but they would all be taking up squad places before they'd get down to Ward-Prowse. So, I think I heard the tail end of an interview that Ward-Prowse did with Adam Blackmore at the end of the game today, and he basically said, when I get on the pitch, I've got to take my chances, and so that's the case for him. And Walker Peters is obviously a bit further back, and he's just got to hope that if he gets the call for these games or for any other games, that he comes in and does a really good job. But it is always going to be difficult, especially difficult for the fullbacks because of the players he's up against.
And from a selfish point of view, Ben, is it better for us the fewer players that go away, the better?
Yeah, of course, because I think it means they can't get injured. It means we can work on tactics. Ralph's got them on the training ground and things like that. I think the challenge always is, and Glen's right. I mean, there's always this sort of reputation, isn't there, that you can't get an international call up if you play for Southampton, particularly for England, is that then players think, well, I need to move on, as they have done previously, to get in the England squad. And I don't think Carl's that sort of player. I think he realised that his career's been, I wouldn't say transformed, but it's been elevated by playing at Saints. I was disappointed maybe that he was not selected, but not surprised, Martin, because I think it's just, when you keep seeing players like Harry Maguire getting picked when he's just, played the way he has. I think Carl couldn't have done any more over the last couple of months than what he's done. And if he still doesn't get a chance, then for me, that says more about England than it does about Carl.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, well, let's see how that all works out for James Ward-Prowse. We wish him the very best of luck. Before we go, quick shout out to our loyal and much loved patrons, and a big welcome actually to Joe, or Chicago Saint, who joined our Bobby Stokes tier this week. So hello to Joe, and thanks very much for your support. In our Matt Letizier tier patrons, we've got Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy, Phil Cook, and Nick Higston. And in our Francis Benali tier, we've got Nick Reed, Matt Hall, and Dave Melton. You can find out more about becoming a TSP patron and all the benefits that come with that over on the website. Thank you to Glen. Thanks to Ben. Have a great week, guys. Have a nice international break, won't you?
Will do.
Enjoy Ellen Road when you get there, Ben. Enjoy that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to having a rest now from the pod. I think the chaps are back, so I won't have to come back and relive it. So that's a relief.
Don't forget to follow this podcast wherever you're listening. You can leave us a review as well. On the socials, it's at Total Saints Pod. You'll find us on Twitter and Facebook. You can get in touch as well during the week if you like via the website. Do drop us an email. Thank you for listening, and we will see you after the international break.